what it is. So you guys are listening to Six Secret Radio right now. This is RJ. I'm here with Kevin. We are on the Bad Dinner Guest Network, and I do apologize if you just watched that first 5 minutes with no audio.
But you're a real trooper if you did.
Yeah, really appreciate that effort and commitment. So Kevin and I were just talking about this article here about where the Norway was building a 600-mile border fence with its border with Russia in order to keep the Syrian immigrants out. And we were just talking about some of the effects that we could see occur with this. And essentially, I think that you're going to see people that are stuck in the European Union, like France, that hate the immigrants that are being forced down their throat as much as they just hate immigrants in general because they're so racist. Not only that, the terrorist tax, I think they're going to see things like this and want to follow suit, and maybe it's going to lead to some people pointing them out and saying, look, if we leave the EU too, we can do this as well. This is the kind of tough political measures we need, kind of like Trump got away with.
Right, and so, as I said, I think this is going to be a very polarizing issue, and I think that, like you said with the EU, this could, there's already been some talk, of more countries wanting to pull out and that sort of thing, so, seeing this, I am not exactly sure what to think of this. I have a hard time not looking through the lens of how is this going to affect us in our current, we're already in a pretty, can't even think of a good word to describe our current situation with this campaign. It's pretty volatile. It's a bit of a shakeup. So I don't know. This is concerning.
Yeah, I definitely feel you. I don't know if it's really going to affect relationships with Russia too much there. But Norway, one of the reasons they're doing this is because Norway's basically been pushing these refugees off onto Norway. So they've been coming through Russia, and Russia's been offering them passage, essentially, and sending them to the Norwegian border. So it could go either way. Hopefully you see some people wanting to pull out of the EU for it. I would like to see some more turmoil on that end of the border, or not end of the border, but end of the globe, I guess I should say. But yeah, sorry, just had some technical issues there, been struggling through. But so the other thing I really want to talk to you about was this video of Gary Johnson, and I don't know if you heard, I'm sure you heard from me at least already, that he came out in favor of the carbon tax. So we should just watch this video where he comes out through it, and then you can give your thoughts, and I can give mine, if that's cool with you. So we'll just transition here and hit
one of the
play and
most
see what happens.
beautiful areas of the country. What would you do about climate?
Well, I do think that climate change is occurring, that it is man-caused. One of the proposals that I think is a very libertarian proposal, and I'm just open to this, is taxing carbon emission that may have the result of being self-regulating.
So you agree with the people who say the answer is to put a price on carbon and then the market will take care of it?
The market will take care of it. I mean, when you look at it from the standpoint of better results and actually less money to achieve those results, that's what is being professed by a carbon tax.
But you would like that better than, say, the Obama Clean Power Plan?
Well, yes. My understanding of, back to carbon tax, is that it can accomplish all these things in a very free market way. Coal is a great free market example right now. You and I do not want carbon emission. We don't want it. And so right now, natural gas costs less than coal. So there are no new coal plants that are going to be built given the price of natural gas. and that's something that you and I desire. So it's happening. I'm afraid that coal, from a free market standpoint, has been done in.
So, A, what are you getting at there? Because, you know, nobody I know in the free market world thinks that carbon tax is the way to go if you want a free market. And not only that, but the only reason that natural gas is so cheap right now is because of government subsidies. That's not the free market at work there. That's government subsidies at work. I mean, fracking's helped, but at the end of the day, it's not a free market solution. But are you surprised to see Johnson come out like this, or?
No, I'm not surprised at all, because it just this personally, I'm not surprised. This sort of it just. Am I surprised to see a libertarian say it? Sure, but am I surprised to hear him say it? Not really, because the one thing I've come to expect from Gary is that I'm not going to be able to essentially guess where he's going to go on any one thing. So I personally don't like this idea. The carbon tax. I don't like it at all. I don't see how it would be supported by a libertarian. So I just
Are you pro carbon tax, or you're?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same page with you there. I was equally taken aback by his position on it. And so was a lot of people in the libertarian movement. I was really taken back by the amount of infighting that this sparked. There's already been a lot of infighting, but when he came out for the carbon tax, it set off every forum I'm in. And to be honest with you, like, more than I got mad about the position, because I already knew where I stood on it, this started making me kind of wonder, like, with all this infighting going on inside the LP, has it always been like this? I never really paid much attention to the Libertarian Party or the LP until this year, because I've never been a Johnson supporter. The past two elections he ran in, Ron Paul was also in, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, when I would look at some libertarian foundations and stuff, I would see his quotes come up, not Ron Paul, but Gary Johnson's quotes come up, or his positions, and something about it would turn me off. So because he turned me off, I instantly was turned off the LP, and I never really paid a whole lot of attention for it. Now there's no Ron Paul, and Ron Paul was running as a Republican. So again, I paid attention to the Republican Party, and back then, I mean, I was just coming out of high school, or still in high school. I was basically thought I was a Republican and that Ron Paul was a Republican, but Ron Paul was a Libertarian running as a Republican instead of a Republican running as a Libertarian. And I was wondering, you know, how many other people were like me, and because Ron Paul was there for them, they hadn't looked at the Libertarian Party either, and if maybe a lot of this infighting was new to the Libertarian Party, or if it had always been there. And, you know, I was talking to a lot of people in the forums and stuff trying to find out about it, and a lot of people really don't know. I mean, Bob Barr is the last name before Johnson that comes to mind, and pretty well unrecognizable, except that the Republicans were looking at maybe nominating him for president this year. But he's basically a joke. But with Gary Johnson, there's just so much polarity. I mean, on one side you have like Robert Trzynski calling him a left-wing candidate in the Federalist, and on the other you have Brian Daugherty. He's basically saying that those of us that defect from the Gary Johnson political stance, he's basically saying that we care more about the culture war than about a smaller government. And not to get too far off the point I was trying to get to him, I would say that, yeah, we care more about the culture war than smaller government, because the way you get to a smaller government when the culture screams for government is by changing that culture. You can't get a candidate on the stage out there espousing Democrat ideas or Republican ideas or statist ideas at the end of the day and expect to change the culture of today's youth or any generation toward liberty. So yes, we care about the culture war more than small government, because you're not going to get to small government by tricking people. We need to change that culture. So I guess I kind of think that Brian's right when he says that we care more about the culture war than small government. I just don't think it's a negative. And that kind of brought me to wondering if we were the ones trying to hijack the Libertarian Party, if we were the incumbents, or if, people like Johnson, I should say, were the incumbents, and we're trying to break in with our actual libertarian ideals. And if that was the case, I was okay with it, because the Libertarian Party got its name from libertarian philosophers, not from the Gary Johnsons of the world, you know what I mean? So take it back. When I was looking more into it and stuff, though, I wanted to kind of see, because I knew that the Libertarian Party started back in the 70s after a lot of great works, a lot of them from Rothbard and several others. Kind of wanted to see how they started, if they'd always been steady libertarians or if they were kind of statists in disguise. And back in 72 is the first time that you see libertarians on the ticket, and the party was just getting itself together. It was really unorganized, and they only made the ticket in like 3 states. But it was cool, got a new party on the ticket, at least in a few states, got that option out there. Did not stand a chance at winning the election, not at all. But something cool that happened is that Roger McBride, who was an elector in the Electoral College, and if you're listening to this and you recognize the word but you can't really think of what it means, the Electoral College is, so we all cast our vote, and that's the popular vote, and then an elector in the Electoral College is supposed to vote that direction, but they can be what they call a faithless elector, and they can vote for whoever they want rather than who the popular vote went for. And I think that happened in a Bush election, didn't it? As well, I think a DC. Anyhow, but yeah, so what Roger McBride does is he sees this candidate in 72 come on the stage, and he sees a party that actually relates to him as an individual, and instead of voting for the direction he's supposed to, he votes as a faithless elector in the general election for the 72 LP candidate. And why this is cool to me is that's a Trump move. That is a way to come onto the stage and make your name out there from the get-go. And this isn't a party that had been established and was just trying some trickery. This is a party that just came out on stage, and the first move that happens with him is an elector goes AWOL and votes Libertarian. And the balls that must take to see a candidate that you like and be like, you know what, I'm going to show these people how broken their system is and that they don't really have any control, and at the same time I'm going to show them the solution to it, which is this party that represents personal liberty. So that's a really cool breakout for the Libertarian Party to me. That same elector, Roger McBride, he went on to run in 76 for president as a libertarian. So, I mean, you could say he was trying to buy some political capital by doing it. I think that he was just really inspired. There's not a whole lot out there on his platform, though. I could not find much on that, but by his actions, I'm going to guess he was a pretty cool guy.
Well, I mean, do you think he's just sort of tucked away in the internet, kind of hidden, something that people wouldn't necessarily want attention to be brought to? I mean,
maybe, quite possibly. You don't hear much about what was the guy's name that ran back in the early 90s for president independently? I cannot think of his name off the top of my head. It's going to kill me.
Perot?
Yeah, Ross Perot. You don't hear about him much and the things that he did. You don't hear much about that faithless elector in the Bush presidency that I swear occurred. I could be wrong. So maybe they're covering that up on purpose. It's hard to tell.
Well, yeah, or maybe, just it's something that, would, especially at a time like now, when you already hear about things like Facebook and, search results being skewed a little bit, certain things being not put towards the top, maybe this is something that certain people wouldn't want to be seen right now. I could potentially see there, being a reason why nobody knows about this guy, because until this episode coming up to it, I had no idea about any of this either. Not that I've been a libertarian like yourself, but so.
Honestly, I hadn't either, and it's maybe just because I'd been so caught up in the Ron Paul movement, I didn't have any reason to look at the history of it. I really wasn't seeing any of this infighting. And I just kind of always assumed that libertarians were libertarians, you know what I mean? I didn't think that you could call yourself that and then act like this. But it's funny because just after 76, so it only took basically 2 election cycles. In the 1980 election, their nominee his name was Clark, and when he was asked what he thought libertarian meant or how he would describe libertarianism, he used the phrase low tax liberalism. And if that doesn't sound like the first Gary Johnson to run for president as a Libertarian Party candidate, I don't know what else does. Economically.
So he was that first guy at the bar to say, well, I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, that happened in 1980, and then he did a bunch of coke. No, I actually don't really know what happened to him a whole lot, but what I do know is that a lot like Johnson, his running mate was not very popular with the modern libertarians and some of the founders of the party. Speaking mainly here of Rothbard. And what I'm forgetting to mention, or failing to mention, is that Clark's running mate was a Koch. One of the Koch brothers, those same infamous Koch brothers that we all know and love or hate, or maybe a little bit of both. And that, to me, seems a little bit like the Weld move of getting somebody that doesn't really care about the message, and there was somebody that has some other interest, and it's really fucking obvious.
I can see that. That's exactly how I feel about Weld. When we watched that town hall, it seemed like he was there to... He was often willing to jump in front of answers. I felt that he answered... It's weird. I don't know how regular that is to have the VP candidate answer as many questions as the presidential candidate. You would think they would use this one chance to let Gary Johnson speak the most. But, yeah, Weld was there on cleanup.
No, it does a lot of times when you're watching it feel like Weld's there is like cleanup and control. And like before the 1980 election in this situation, Koch was already running some interference within the Libertarian Party. He was funding, at least one journalist, and I can't think of his name or the publication he led, but he was the editor of a publication, and then he also funded basically a student activist organization leader. And he was funding both of these guys to basically put out the message that we need to eliminate nuclear power. And by eliminate nuclear power, I don't mean like hand control over to private organizations and take it out of state hands. I mean, they wanted to outlaw nuclear power. And Rothbard saw this and instantly attacked these two, the activist and the writer, which by proxy attacked Koch and caused a huge rift between them. And it looks like that's basically when you see the split in the Libertarian Party go from the fundamentalist libertarians, because they kind of pushed Rothbard out at this time during the 1980 election and thereafter, and a lot of thinkers like him. So it looks like essentially what I'm getting at is Johnson's basically a symptom of what's already been going on in the Libertarian Party, and maybe we are fighting to take it back. Because I couldn't find another candidate since him other than the one time that Ron Paul ran as a libertarian. That was really a true, tried and true libertarian. And if you're out there listening to this and you can think of one, please send me it. I'd love to hear about it. But to me, it looks like they essentially shut out the true libertarians and are trying to hijack the party for just another mechanism of control. And I see this 1980 election as a move for control, because we can both agree that the Kochs probably didn't want to eliminate nuclear power for the good of the environment or the good of the people or anything like that. I would have to guess and assume, probably correctly, that they had some interest in some other industries, probably energy related, that nuclear would threaten. Not so much, because that's not a libertarian position, that's not a personal liberty position, that's using the state to control an industry or eliminate an industry in this case. Did you have a thought there?
I don't really want to. I don't have the background knowledge that you have when it comes to this one. So I'm just sort of taking you at your word on this. To be honest, I don't have the background that you have. So to me, my conspiracy sense fires off whenever I just hear the fact that a Koch brother's running for office, and I guess so. Yeah, I do have an opinion on it. I agree with the idea that it seems more of a control move, that he wouldn't be pushing for the expulsion of nuclear power for the good of humanity, that there would be some sort of, market controlling ulterior motive behind there. Yeah, that is what that feels like to me.
That's good. I'm glad we're kind of on the same page there. And the reason, I wanted to dive into a little bit of the history of the Libertarian Party here, but seeing this, I couldn't help but draw a parallel into what got Johnson into this entire mess, and maybe some of the interest that might be might be controlling him at the end of the day here. Like, so, if I get, essentially, up until the end of July or early July, Johnson was on the record as against the carbon tax, and that he didn't think that the carbon tax was a good idea, or he wasn't sure that, global warming was entirely man-made. He wasn't completely sold on that. And hate me as much as you want, I'm not completely sold on it either, and there's a lot of people out there that aren't. It's just the instant reaction is to make fun of them instead of, like, hear them out now, so you don't really get to say anything. But we're studying science for a couple hundred years old. That's good data, and projecting it onto thousands, if not millions of years. They're now saying that global warming may have started even earlier than once thought, that it could have been basically when population started expanding, not even the Industrial Revolution anymore, and that humans are basically the end of the world from the get-go.
What a disease we are.
I will agree with that. Joe Rogan basically called us a cancer, I think. There's a really good 4-minute cut out of one of his podcasts of him talking about humans being a cancer, and he's on point with it. I'm not going to argue with it.
Yeah, I won't either. That's the sad reality of what this research has done so far. I do want to take 1 second to give a shout out to a human that I do love that has hit us up on the chat there.
Oh shit!
Hey Lou,
how's it going?
what up, man? But so anyway, back to point here.
But yeah. What was my point?
Well, but besides nihilism,
that's essentially my life.
I think we might be transitioning out of the Coke thing. Was that was where we left off?
Essentially, we're getting So, what I was basically getting at is the new Coke, in my opinion, is Elon Musk. So in the article that I can't seem to find now, Musk was essentially saying that the Libertarian Party should take the position of the carbon tax, and that it's a libertarian principle. And Musk is a well-known tax collector. I mean, his entire company is funded at behest of the American population. I think we're up to $300 million, or maybe it's $300 billion that we've spent on his company. And then you look at the controls that he wants out there on the industry. They're not controls for safety or for the environment, even though he claims they are. You look at the lithium-ion batteries it takes to power his cars. Not only are they catching on fire and causing a safety hazard, or his self-driving cars that are getting into accidents, and you don't see regulators out there saying shit because, again, he's funded at the taxpayer's expense. They got to be getting their kickback somewhere. But not only that, the production of this lithium, all of the terrible labor practices involved with it, on top of the footprint that it has on the environment if you buy into everything, is far worse than a standard car. And not only that, we're propping up this corporation to do this and essentially pollute more than any diesel could. And our punishment to Volkswagen for their recent boondoggle with getting caught lying, essentially, our punishment to them was they can't sell diesels over here anymore. So we have a car that actually is better for the consumer in that they spend less money on fuel. It's debatable on their environmental impact, competing against a luxury car that's being subsidized by the American taxpayer. It's not like you and I can drive around in these. And then this is a luxury car that he gets to claim he takes a $4,000 loss on after your subsidy for it. I'm not buying that, though. And this is, again, why I think Elon Musk is kind of a slimeball. You're telling me that on a luxury car you couldn't upmarket that $4,000, set the price firm, and still sell as many models as you're selling? You're telling me it's that extra $4,000 that's getting those consumers to buy those cars? To me, that's a prop he uses and that politicians can use to keep getting this money. And there's some fudging in the numbers there, but I don't buy it. There's no way. I think that's just his way of having that advertisement out there, that not only the consumer can say, yeah, I really took Tesla for a ride, I got him for $4,000 under what this car is worth, but he can go to Washington and say, look, I'm trying to make these new green cars that are amazing for everybody and are going to solve the world, but I need your money. And by your money, I mean the taxpayers' money. And these are the people that Johnson's putting himself in bed with. And again, I think it's through Weld, because I haven't seen a move like this out of Johnson. I haven't seen the cronyism come out of Johnson. And they may claim that it's not related at all to this, but I don't see how in 1 month, after this happening, almost to the day, that Johnson can come out suddenly for the carbon tax after he hears a guy with a bunch of money say the word libertarian and carbon tax in the same sentence. But I would assume it's at Bill Weld's request, which is, I mean, you see that a lot, though. You see the vice president being the slime ball money man. Look at Cheney and all the money he made over.
And Poppy.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite VP.
Again, Koch back when he ran as a libertarian, or wanted to be one, I should say.
Or Lyndon Baines Johnson, the slimiest of all the VPs.
Yeah. do go on. So Lyndon B's your least favorite VP?
Yeah, Kennedy's successor.
Okay.
Yeah, the guy the whole Gulf of Tonkin event that didn't happen, that he said happened to get us into Vietnam.
Okay.
He was essentially kind of used as a fall guy in a lot of publications. There are a lot. You can go find a bunch of books on the shelves now about how it was LBJ that had JFK assassinated. And I'm not buying into all of that. I wouldn't. Let's just say he definitely benefited from it. I don't necessarily think that he could have pulled all those strings to make that happen. But yeah, you are right. To your point, the VP always seems to be the slime ball when needed. Also, in our current point, I'll risk my lockup here. I will say Joe Biden is our current slime ball. Like, absolutely.
When I was going over this and stuff, I wanted to say something about that, but I couldn't find something that slimy that Biden's done other than touch up on some ladies.
The omnibus. He wrote the precursor to the Patriot Act.
Jesus fuck.
Which only got passed because of the Oklahoma City bombing, and because it was rebranded, restamped as the Anti-Terrorism Act. A year later, signed through by President Clinton, quoting the Murrah Building bombing as its reason. So.
Never waste a good crisis, they say. That's hilarious. I don't know why I didn't even put two and two together there. I don't see that being like a money play, but it's definitely a power play, and as an affirmed status, it makes a lot of sense. And again, as a firm status, I don't know that Mr. Johnson's partner there, Mr. Weld, wouldn't have supported that bill. He's already wanting to make that FBI investigation team.
That super team
that
won't ever make any mistakes.
Somehow going to rival the NSA, though, because anyhow.
Sorry we screwed up. Give us more money. We'll fix it.
That's essentially government at the end of the day, it would seem. The other party I wanted to point out that's pro, because I was point out that the Kochs definitely weren't on board to help the environment, and I was talking about Elon Musk wanting this carbon tax, and I don't again think that that's because he's green or he wants to help the environment. I think it's because he wants that leg up for his business at the cost of the taxpayer and at the use of government force. The other company, it turns out, that's highly publicized as being pro carbon tax is ExxonMobil. And if you want to talk about a country that is, or a country, well, may as well be a country. They have higher profits than the GDP of most countries. But, yeah, you talk about a company that's obviously not looking out for the environment or the little man or anything like that. The reason they want these regulations, and I can't see Johnson being so stupid not to notice it or to heard it or to seen it in research. The reason these companies want this control, because a lot of people are like, well, what's the end game? Okay, so they want to do this. Their end game is making it harder for other companies to compete. So they raise that bar, and because they already have these massive amounts of savings, they can take the hit and keep competitors from coming in. And that's, again, why you see car manufacturers other than Tesla out there wanting to increase fuel efficiency standards. It's to make it harder for their poorer competition. And that's exactly why it's not a free market idea to put that carbon tax out there to begin with, because you're essentially stifling innovation that could be solving the issue that you already see occurring. People already want cleaner cars. That's why even when diesels were easy to get, they were still outsold by gasoline cars. Just things like that tend to sort themselves out. We don't want to be dirty by nature. There's a reason we went from black plumes going out of tailpipes to cleaner burning engines before all of these basically regulators got a hold of stuff, and the regulators have only been able to siphon off money and make it harder for competition to get in. We see all of the auto manufacturers that have dropped out because they couldn't keep up with the government regulation. Kind of makes you wonder what the cost of a car would be and where we'd be if they all got to stick around. you might see the same thing happen with these carbon taxes. Look at what the regulation on. I don't have an article for it, but did you see where they finally passed regulation on the e-cigarette fluids?
Oh no, I personally, I think I've smoked an e-cigarette maybe 3 times, so it wasn't something I was following wholeheartedly. But what is the verdict?
So they announced it, and there was time to like appeal it and stuff, and I guess they ran out of time. But essentially, the liquid juice that goes into the e-cigarettes have to go through the same testing and stuff that cigarettes have to go through. So per fluid, they're going to have to spend anywhere from like $500,000 to $1 million. And again, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I wasn't planning on talking about this tonight. But they're going to have to spend per fluid that amount of money. And you walk into one of these vape shops, and they might have 100 different flavors. And then on top of 100 different flavors, they'll have them in maybe 3 different nicotine offerings. And the way this regulation works is each one of those flavors and each nicotine amount would have to be individually approved. So for one flavor at 3 different levels, you're looking at anywhere between $1.5 million to $3 million to get that approved. So it's going to put, these things were being made in small batches by like handcrafted, you know what I mean? They were artisan. You probably have friends that know how to make this stuff.
That's how it works, though. I mean, something does well on its own in the market, and then once there's time to say, oh, okay, well, here we use regulation to cut all of you out and make it to where now pretty soon you'll only be able to smoke Marlboro e-cigarettes or Camel e-cigarettes, and then it's just,
It's funny you named cigarette. Did I say who funded the campaign to make them have to test it? Who funded this legislation?
Philip Morris.
It was Big Tobacco. So again, this is obviously not the altruistic government looking out for the people. This is big corporations using government control under the guise of protecting the people to basically keep their interest. And you're going to see a lot of these places go under. I for one, I had an e-cigarette. It's just what sucks with them is that you can't buy the coils in a gas station, and you can buy the fluids a lot of times in a gas station. But if you have a favorite, you got to return to your favorite dealer for it. Not dealer like that, but you know what I mean.
No, it was just a funny word. You could have said shop. I'm just saying.
Could have, but I didn't. No, but yeah. So again, that same thing. You just see this over and over again. I don't see how Gary Johnson couldn't see this and still do what he was doing, unless he was doing it knowingly. I don't have any proof though that Elon Musk or ExxonMobil are funding his campaign as of yet, but I would be surprised not to find out some ties between them and one of them here in the future.
So do you think then that maybe Gary, do you think he has his hands dirty, or do you think he's just kind of got his head in the clouds? Because I asked, one of the things I noticed about this clip that irked me, and I understand that this probably wasn't his decision. This was somebody in his PR department making the decision to have him dress like he just jogged 20 miles.
Oh, he biked there.
I didn't get to see him bike there, but I saw his perfectly gelled hair with the shades set in there, right? And I know that he did not just bike really anywhere. He might have gotten out of camera sight and then biked up to there. But either way, it's just sort of one of those dumb pitches where he's saying, Donald Trump's a pussy, I've climbed 4 mountains, vote for me for president. Like, who gives a shit if you rode a bike there? But it's what I kind of get, how George Bush seemed dumb, how W seemed dumb to a lot of people, and I kind of feel like at times maybe he might have been just kind of acting a little bit. I think he kind of lived it up. I kind of feel like Gary Johnson, he's either playing dumb or he's really just dumb. I'm starting to think maybe he's just dumb and he's just like, hey, cool, I'm going to make a lot of money here. I'm just along for the ride, whatever happens. And then Bill Weld is calling the shots maybe.
I hate to be that guy with the fucking tinfoil hat on, but the more I watch it, the more I can't help but agree. And you look at him and he looks like a dork. Like, he really does. He looks like a dork. He looks kind of like a duck sometimes, but he never looks like he's quite in the same room as you. And he, like, when you watch his videos, and he always, like, he'll end it with a talking point, or, like, he'll start the conversation where he wants to by just talking point, and then talks about that talking point. Like, it always seems like he's coming in at the end of a conversation with everything.
He looks like that weird uncle at Thanksgiving that just won't stop asking you about your life when you're like 13. Hey, there's a good photo. I love the one of him with the glasses where he looks like he's, hey, what's up, man? What's up, guys? Can I bum a cigarette?
He's been on since last night. Also, those edibles were incredible. And that's what I kind of wonder, is he's just there to legalize weed and Weld's there to somehow get himself rooted into power a little bit more than what he is. But I don't think I can't look at that face and see like conniving bastard. I only see like that uncle that had like one screw loose but somehow still made more money than you'll ever see.
Yeah, he's the guy who I'd imagine going into his guest bedroom and seeing just like a conspiracy theory wall put somewhere. But also he had that little deer in the headlights feel about it in the town hall. I mean, he to be honest, he did kind of seem like he roasted a jay in between commercial breaks at times, where he would just kind of. I wish we had the video so I could. I realized I just made a face that no one can see. But so yeah. I kind of get the same feeling as you, but then again, he might just be really good. Maybe he's really good at, because he seems so simple. Maybe that's part of the act. Maybe he really is making these decisions, or maybe he's just along for the ride and he's dumb. I don't know.
I would be surprised if he was like actually that cognizant of what he was doing to the party, just because again I can't see him as that character. And I would be a lot less critical of him in his live performances if he was putting some stuff out there not live that like stood up to libertarian principles and stuff. One of the biggest reasons we've seen the elections go the way they are is because of the introduction of the video camera. I can't remember the specific election, but was it Nixon that was sweating heavily on stage and it blew it for him, or do you remember who that was? On one of the first video like debates, national debates on video, the guy like sweated his dick off and it made him look real nervous. And it essentially, even though he should have won the debate on points, he lost it just because he looked so nervous to the American public.
Which is interesting. I mean, anybody who's been on a stage before knows how hot those frickin' lights are, which in a suit, it would be difficult not to sweat your ass off.
I'm sweating my dick off here. It was Kennedy versus Nixon. And I think Nixon was a little sick or something like that, and he was just sweating his
He probably was a little bit nervous though, because I mean he's like the Babe Ruth of weasels, man. Like that, he probably was. Some of that had to at least be nerves. And JFK was nothing if not a great public speaker. I mean, people still play his clips all the time, and so I could see him kind of just getting. I could see that being a little bit part of it, but also how funny is it that that's the American perspective, like, oh, this guy was sweating, he's nervous, so he wouldn't make a good president. So with Gary, the other thing we should point out with...
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. That completes the opening statements, and now the candidates will answer questions or comment upon one another's answers to questions put by correspondents of the networks.
I can hold the point.
I'm Sander Van Oker, NBC News.
We do not own the rights.
Charles Warren, Mutual News.
This is via Max Power.
I'm Stuart Novins, CBS News.
On YouTube.
Bob Fleming, ABC News.
And ABC
The first
News.
question to Senator Kennedy from Mr. Fleming.
Senator, the vice president in his campaign has said that you are naive and at times immature. He has raised the question of leadership. On this issue, why do you think people should vote for you rather than the vice president?
Well, the vice president and I came to the Congress together. 1946, we both served in the Labor Committee. I've been there now for 14 years, the same period of time that he has, so that our experience in government is comparable. Secondly, I think the question is, what are the programs that we advocate?
Like
what is the party record that we lead? I come out of the Democratic Party, which in this century has produced Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman, and which supported and sustained these programs which I've discussed tonight. Mr. Nixon comes out of the Republican Party. He was nominated by it. And it is a fact that through most of these last 25 years, the Republican leadership has opposed federal aid for education, medical care for the aged, development of the Tennessee Valley, development of our natural resources. I think Mr. Nixon is an effective leader of his party. I hope he would grant me the same. The question before us is, which point of view and which party do we want to lead the United States?
You know, you keep
Mr.
talking about
Nixon,
how
would
great
you
the
like-
speaker is there, but everything he said made me want to vote for Nixon.
Well, okay, fair enough, but we'll
sweating
see what else maybe happens.
A comment
because
on that statement?
That I admit that wasn't his.
The next question to Vice President Nixon from Mr. Van Oker.
Mr. Vice President, since the question of executive leadership is a very important campaign issue, I'd like to follow Mr. Novan's question. Now, Republican campaign slogans, you'll see them on signs around the country, as we did last week, say, it's experience that counts. That's over a picture of yourself, sir. Implying that you've had more governmental, executive decision-making experience than your opponent. Now, in his news conference on August 24th, President Eisenhower was asked to give one example of a major idea of yours that he adopted. His reply was, and I'm quoting, "If you give me a week, I might think of one. I don't remember." Now, that was a month ago, sir, and the President hasn't brought it up since.
A month ago, he started
I'm wondering,
this
sir, if you
question.
can clarify
How are you supposed
which
to answer this?
version is correct, the one put out by Republican campaign leaders or the one put out by
I'm sorry,
President
can you bring up
Eisenhower?
that middle part again?
Well, I would suggest, Mr. Van Oker, that if you know the President, that was probably a facetious remark. I would also suggest that insofar as his statement is concerned, that I think it would be improper for the President of the United States to disclose the instances in which members of his official family had made recommendations, as I have made them through the years, to him which he has accepted or rejected. The President has always maintained, and very properly so, that he is entitled to get what advice he wants from his cabinet and from his other advisors without disclosing that to anybody, including, as a matter of fact, the Congress.
Fair enough.
Now, I can only say this. Through the years, I have sat in the National Security Council.
You want to go through all
I have been in the cabinet. I have met with the legislative leaders. I have met with the President when he made the great decisions with regard to Lebanon, Kimoy Matsu, other matters. The President has asked for my advice. I have given it. Sometimes my advice has been taken. Sometimes it is not. I do not say that I have made the decisions. And I would say that no president should ever allow anybody else to make the major decisions. The President only makes the decisions. All that his advisors do is to give counsel when he asks for it. As
What
far
the shit
as
is
what
that?
experience
You people voted
counts
for him?
and whether that is experience
Fucking
that counts,
idiots.
that isn't for me to say. I can only say that my experience is there for the people to consider. Senator Kennedy's is there for the people to consider. As he pointed out, we came to the Congress in the same year. His experience has been different from mine. Mine has been in the executive branch. His has been in the legislative branch. I would say that the people now have the opportunity to evaluate his as against mine, and I think both he and I are going to abide by whatever the people decide.
Senator Kennedy?
Well, I'll just say that the question is of experience, and the question also is what our judgment is of the future, and what our goals are for the United States, and what ability we have to implement those goals.
Well, I feel like
Abraham
I'm
Lincoln
putting
came to the
myself in shoes for
presidency in
audio.
1860 after a
Damn, man, I can't
rather
listen to this podcast, not a fucking
little-known
50-year-old
session in the House of
Well,
Representatives,
honestly, like,
and
this
after being
debate
defeated
is
for the Senate in
referenced a
58
lot,
and was a
and I've
distinguished
never
president.
seen it before.
There's no certain road to the presidency.
And
There are
it
no
might
guarantees
be nice for
that
next time to
if you
talk
take
about
one road
to
or
know
another
what
that
they're
you will be a
talking about.
successful president. I have been in the
I'd
Congress
kinda
for
like to see
14
from my
years.
own eyes, 'cause I knew to
I have
reference it
voted
before
in the
the
last
sweat,
8
but I
years.
never actually seen him
And the Vice President was presiding over the Senate and meeting his other responsibilities. I have met decisions over 800 times on matters which affect not only the domestic security of the United States, but as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The question really is which candidate and which party can meet the problems that the United States is going to face in the 60s.
Mr. Van Oker's question for Vice President Nixon?
Mr. Vice President, in one of your earlier statements, you said, we've moved ahead, we've built more schools, we've built more hospitals. Now, sir, isn't it true that the building of more schools is a local matter for financing? Were you claiming that the Eisenhower administration was responsible for the building of these schools?
Oh, yeah,
Or is it the
absolutely. And I
local
one thing I
school
will
districts
say,
that provide
I do
for it?
like
Not at
about
all.
this that there
As
are-
a matter of
there is
fact, your
live
question brings out a
crowd
point
here.
that I'm very glad
We
to
could do
make.
it. We could do
And
it.
in appraising whether we are moving ahead
I
or
would
not,
appreciate a debate.
we
in a
think
closed
only of what the
environment
federal government is doing.
without the fanfare and the playing
Now,
of the
that
crowd.
isn't the
You don't like
test
the
of whether
Clintons and
America
balloons?
moves. The test of whether America moves is whether the
I can't
federal
wait till I
government,
get that scene
plus
out.
the state government, plus the local government, plus the biggest segment of all, individual enterprise, moves. We have, for example, a gross national product of approximately $500 billion. Roughly $100 billion to $125 billion of that is the result of government activity. $400 billion
His lips look
approximately
really weird
is a
to you.
result of what
Yeah,
individuals
they
do.
look real pale.
Now, the reason the Eisenhower administration has moved, the reason that we've had the funds for it.
The campaign may have blamed the sweat and the suit side. Get back past the fact that maybe people just like Kennedy better, because I'm in that, like what we are told to expect out of it. And maybe that's the wrong debate, and I'm wrong, but that's what Google brought me to. I don't know, but that's basically what I was getting at, is that I would like to see maybe just not on air at all and not pictures at all or video at all, because we take too much of that into account, not enough of policy into account. And you can kind of see the wild swings we've taken since video's been introduced.
Yeah, well, look at Gary. I mean, that's something to begin and show the people. Look at that. Those commercials they've done. They're ridiculous. And he talks to you like you're a child, and that's the other reason it's hard to think that Gary Johnson is in any way this sort of vicious backdoor crook, because like you hear him talk to you, it sounds like he's talking to his very young grandchild or something, or like, you know, his little niece. That's how it sounds on these commercials to me, where he's like, we are Republican governors. We winning in Democratic states.
Yeah, I'm going to look and see if I can find their newest
Have
one
you
here.
found the ice cream? But yeah, so I agree with you. I think it's this whole part of this fanfare, like the whole video that was played with the Stone Cold glass. You know, we talked about this, the whole V for Vendetta, like Chancellor Clinton put up on the screen, the Long Live the Queen, the talking head on the big screen. She was up there, and all the balloons flying and the people screaming, and they're like, politics feels like reality TV now. Feels like the National Convention feels like the Super Bowl, or like it's like political Comic-Con. Just a bunch of people dressed up as politicians and dressed up as people who actually have serious interests, and then they just party for a couple of weeks or a weekend and watch a cool video.
Gary Johnson ad or not? I'm trying to scroll through now. I can't wait till it actually looks like.
Oh man, that's
what?
I just saw a 30-minute video on the UN full speech. I thought I saw the UN and it with the question mark, and it made me giggle. Oh, good, that people will get to see it now.
Yeah,
there you go.
I don't know for sure that this is actually what we want, but it is a Gary Johnson advertisement. I just don't know if this is made by a PAC or a private person or what, but we're going to watch it and find out.
Throughout our history, our forefathers brought about the greatest change known to mankind. Generations of men and generations of women.
Big, powerful imagery.
Gradually develop an idea to believe that one day, people like me and people like you will have the power to control our own fate. But freedom wasn't free. It was paid for by our hard work and perseverance that birthed the revolution.
Flag going up.
They sacrificed their lives so we can inherit and pass the same freedom down to our future generations.
Yeah.
I heard from many that they didn't want to waste their vote. Wasting your vote is voting for somebody that you don't believe in. I'm running for president of the United States. I am the third party.
Ooh, redneck lighting off fireworks. I didn't expect that.
Freedom to live.
I gotta say, by leaving
the freedom to love,
advertisement, they've done a lot better.
But again,
the freedom to dream.
This is a short film. This is the trailer for a movie. This is how people decide who will lead them now. Is based on the emotional strings that are pulled when they watch ads like this. It blows my mind, and
everything about it was statist. It was worship the flag. It was so, and I get that like a lot of his donors are soldiers, but a lot of them are because of his non-interference policies, not because they want a huge military. But what about that wasn't doused in flags, doused in crazy nationalism? I don't know.
That was awful. That was terrible. People are gonna see that, and it's got the good music. It's got the uplifting imagery, and it's got all these nice iconic symbols that speak volumes to you as a person. You take it in. It's more powerful than the words. If you notice, he said, I heard maybe one sentence in there.
Yeah, it was basically talking about wasting your vote or not. That really looks like an ad made by a super PAC or a fan, essentially, of the Johnson.
Probably. It saddens me to see it. If this is a fan ad, okay, cool. Actually, you should maybe play the last 7 seconds. It will probably tell us who, whenever you get a second, because
maybe it will.
It might say something at the end here. It may not.
They're not seeing it live on YouTube.
Google me. Gary Johnson.
That's his tag. Actually, just let us know to Google him. That is all that it did. So.
Yep, Google me.
Joining us from
the Bad Dinner Guest Network, we have Kevin and RJ still.
Oh, I like nice save.
Speaking of Gary Johnson, though, you heard him speak about religious liberty, and that he really wasn't a fan of being able to discriminate under religious pretense. Now, my question is what he would do about these French cops stripping Muslim women on the beaches of France, talking about a racist society that hates their immigration issue. I don't know if you saw anything about this, but I just want to pull up the article because it blew my fucking mind that it went this far.
Talk about V for Vendetta again.
And I kind of wonder, though, is that their religious freedom to go against the rules that say you're not allowed to be on the beach wearing this garb, because it's obviously not hurting them. By what we've seen from him so far, though, I'm apt to believe that he's probably okay with shit like this. I mean, it is the rule that they can't, and the only reason they want to do it is because they're religious. But yeah, here in France, and we'll pull this up for the video watchers so they can see the article. It was on libertyviral.com, but a Muslim woman who'd been peacefully tanning in Nice on the beach was forced to remove pieces of her clothing that resembled a popular Muslim-worn bathing suit called a burkini, which, if that's what they actually call it, they're as racist as I am, and that's hilarious. But you gotta admit that's kind of funny. The burkini.
Yeah, that's just a par for the times now. Just mash some words together, and then there you go.
But I really hope that's what they
So
call
the rule is that these have been banned.
Yeah. It says another young Muslim mother was ordered off the beach at Cannes and fined for simply wearing a headscarf. 3 armed officers pointed pepper spray canister at her face and told her she was in violation of a new rule that outlawed swimming costumes that cover the entire body. That's pretty liberal to where you're enforcing the women to be naked or semi-naked, and a 13-year-old version of me loves this law and wants it to go further. But it's insane to see this amount it makes me wonder at least what the retribution of this is, because to me this is how you breed terrorism.
Rewards program is simple.
I mean, what more does an ISIS kid
stay,
that's already been brought up to believe that the West is out there to destroy his women,
this, however, will not be simple.
his entire faith and everything else, than armed security pointing mace, and I guess if they carried guns, they'd probably be pointing that instead at a woman and telling her to disrobe. Granted, she's not exposing her tits or anything, but to them it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to see a woman's eyes, anything but her eyes, to a lot of them. So to show the West on pictures in video forcing her to take off this religious garb, I think you're going to see some retribution and a lot more pissed off kids. But at the same time, they've done it to themselves, so the EU has done it to them and pushed them into this position. I don't know that so many Somalians would have fled to France just because they know how racist it is. You know what I mean? Like, these people were funneled into there because of EU regulations. It's not like they necessarily chose there. Granted, it's better than Syria, I suppose, maybe. But is that really that much better than ISIS forcing you to wear more clothing? I don't know how so. They were just as willing to lock her up for it, and if she would have refused, do you think they wouldn't have killed her? Do you think they would have been like, no, just go on about your day if she refused to be taken in or refused to leave the beach?
Well, she would have been pepper sprayed and taken in.
What if she could resist to the point where that's what I'm saying, though. If she could resist to the point where they couldn't take her off that beach, what is the alternative? If she was armed or if she was just strong? I don't know if you know anybody that's been pepper sprayed, but after a certain period of time, you just kind of become immune to it. Some people basically are from the get-go. I'm just saying they were willing to exercise force to the point of removing her from the beach.
Oh no, and I agree with that. I think they, with seeing the 4 men there that were there to handle the situation, I feel like they would have gotten her They would have gotten her off the beach one way or the other without her dying. But
You would
in,
think,
in,
but
in another situation.
Look at Eric Gardner, though. Look at him selling tax-free cigarettes, Lucy's. They had 4 police officers there, and they still managed to kill him rather than bring him in. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like he was putting up a huge fight either. He was basically just standing there saying, "Get off me." It wasn't like he was throwing punches at him. It's not that far to think that in the process of kidnapping her to take her to jail for it, that she could have died. You see him body slam these people and traumatic brain injuries occurred, or they're in comas for the rest of their life. It sounds really far-fetched to say they're willing to kill him, but anytime you're willing to put your hands on somebody, you're taking responsibility for what can occur after that, and they're okay with that, is what I'm getting at. So, yeah, I don't think they were going to put a gun to her forehead and say, leave, but I think if she would have had a gun say, I'm not leaving, or I'm not disrobing, they would have shot the shit out of her. And I don't know if that she wouldn't have been right to say, no, I'm not doing this, and you can't make me. You're going to have to kill me. I'm okay with that at the end of the day, because I think that's her right to wear that clothing on the beach.
Yeah, I don't understand this ban at all.
It's a racist ban.
It's supposed to be what, safety, so that way you can't sneak a bomb onto the beach because, you know.
I wonder if they even
is that what they're trying to do with that? I don't see how this is relevant. Why there should be regulations on what you wear to the beach. It's sad. I'm a little disappointed. I mean, my family is from France. You know, I used to be proud of that. I used to hail that almost more than my Americanness. But this is getting a little bit absurd. And then yet you know, we always hear about these tragedies that happen over there, and it's kind of like you said. Well, this is what happens. It's cause and effect here.
Yeah.
You know, like they're not to say like the victims and then the people that get hurt, they're the ones who get screwed because they're not the ones actually causing the effect. But you know, the French government and police in these situations with what they're doing, they seem to be causing these ripple effects that then hurt their own people, and then the people are getting screwed on both sides here.
I doubt all the people involved in the Charlie Hebdo attacks were this racist or backed this type of legislation. I don't even think that they could have claimed this was for safety. I really believe that they probably passed this under knowing what it was for and had no bones about it. They really don't want these people there, and they don't want to integrate into each other's societies. And I mean, there's parts of France that if you go as a white male into, you're going to get stopped by roving Muslim street gangs, essentially, and told you don't enter that neighborhood. This is what it's getting to, and I think this is a lot of it. And I think you're going to see some shit popping off, and that's why we were talking about Norway earlier in the fence. I think they're going to see maybe the EU as the enemy first before the immigrants, maybe.
Well, that is hopefully, yeah, right. I can see that happening because you have, you know, here's the other end of that spectrum where it's like this is what we get for being in the EU, and look at, you know, Norway has a chance to actually do something for themselves. But then again, or is it going to turn into the other end of that could be that all the countries in the EU turn on Norway even more. You know, is Norway going to see some sort of sanction from this? Is our president going to no longer support Norway? I mean, it's something to laugh at, but also it's a potential effect here.
I don't know.
We are the world's police. So if we don't like if we think Norway is being mean, then we can take their milk away. And you know what I'm saying? I'm being a little facetious here, but
Norway. I wanted to look that up before I said it. Norway is part of NATO, so we're basically going to have their back no matter what. And them being so close to Russia, we need them as a proxy, just because the Cold War never really ended. So I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of retribution on our end for it. Not only that, we're not really taking in a lot of Syrians, but from the EU end, you might see some sanctions happening. And again, Russia was already trying to send these Syrians in there, so. Now that they're not allowed to, you might see some retribution from Russia, things like that.
Which I can't wait to find the conspiracy video on YouTube claiming that the wall here in Norway was actually backed by us as a preemptive move for an incoming unforeseen or soon-to-be-seen Russian attack. You know, I can't wait. It's because you've got that. The other thing you talked about with in the sea with us flying nuclear bomb exercise. I mean, things are topsy-turvy right now. We got all kinds of...
Yeah, we're always... bolstering and showing what we can do overseas to kind of exercise our military might a little bit. He's talking about some flyovers. We had 3 nuclear bombers fly over the South China Sea in a military exercise. And if you've been paying attention to the news much there, you know that China's been trying to lay claim to some trade routes there, and some other countries in the area are saying that it's open waters. And that's just kind of our way of establishing that, hey, even though we're on the opposite side of the globe, we got something to say about this. Again, as not an isolationist so much as a leave everybody the fuck alone, private property, that kind of thing. We have no business flying 3 jet airliners over there that have nuclear capabilities. That's the only thing that's going to do is scare populations and really just bring us more drama.
Oh, but we're doing it to protect the little guys that China's bullying around. That's why. It's not because we want to be the ultimate bully in the playground.
Yeah, suddenly we care about fishermen and stuff like that unless they're Somalians, which brings us to the Somalian crisis here, and the fact that a lot of the reasons it's in such turmoil is because they're not allowed to fish those waters. So you could see some shit happening similar over in China. You might see some more groups that are trying to lay claim to these waters for fishing, and China push them out, and even more conflict arise thereafter because of a lack of jobs and stuff in those regions. I really can't remember the other nations that are involved with these trade routes and stuff like that are actually in the area. My question is how far from this lady in France being searched and required to remove her scarf by this police officer are you from, and I don't want to say a Holocaust situation, but essentially tracking and treating a population as second-class citizens here? These people.
Oh, I think it's coming.
Yeah, and is it going to be Muslims? The one thing the Jews had going in their favor is that they weren't on the offensive at all here. But you see an armed society here that is more than happy in many situations to take an offensive role, and you're cornering them even more. I always wondered why the Jews didn't stand up against this stuff. I really think that if you start doing this, you're going to see some Muslim extremists pop off. I don't think they're going to go the route that the Jews went so much there. And I hate to keep using the phrase "the Jews."
No,
but
you don't.
Being a bigot, I don't know what else to use.
Well, and also people will too easily forget that happened, because I could see it happening in France. I could see it getting to the point where it happens here, because it's happened here before with the Japanese, and we're talking about, American-born Japanese descendants who had parents that were Japanese that are put in internment camps and held until it's deemed okay that they can go home. And so the idea that us doing that at any point in the future with the way things are building up, the idea that would be an absurdity to me is a bit laughable. People would have to be naive to think that, because if it continues to accelerate the way that it does, what else is going? At what point? At some point, they're going to get there, right? Their answer so far to everything has been give us more money and more resources, and we'll solve the problem. Well, eventually, won't the solution potentially come up where it's, well, let's just kind of round everybody up and, like you said, tag them, ID them, put whether it's an RFID. Or whether it's, I don't know what it is, but, there's going to be some sort of... That
passport that you were just saying you're okay with, you just shouldn't have to pay for. I mean, they already have it. Do you need that
Well, the passport, yeah, but I'm referring to more as like a potential a tracking. Like, what's to stop them at some point from just saying, well, okay, instead of an internment camp, we're just going to slap GPS in you because we can put a chip in you now.
Yeah.
Just like we do your dog. And you're not gonna die from having a little chip put into your body. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, it's doable. So maybe that's one of the concerns here is when you see kind of the foot get stuck in the door. Once the door's open, you're never really sure how far it's gonna go when it comes to that sort of policing things. Okay, so you brought up the the Air Force bombers.
Trying to give them something to look at there, but. It's all absurd, and at the end of the day, I guess this episode's essentially saying that Gary Johnson's probably a sellout. Bill Weld's in the pocket of Elon Musk, and we're all fucked.
Yeah, because we got really sad on this one.
Muslim extremists are going to take over the world, but
no, they're not. They're gonna fail at that.
Yeah, I think they're going to fail. I just think there's going to be a lot of bloodshed, and I think you're going to see the European Union shift as a whole when shit starts to fall apart, because you're seeing economic collapse on top of displaced populations that are already disenfranchised and have no money. all converging on top of each other in a powder keg. And I can kind of I almost am thankful that there isn't a proliferation of guns in their society, just because maybe you would have seen shit pop off already. But that's not an anti-gun statement. That's an anti-government intervention statement, because I think that's what's gotten there. But you're already seeing things like the ISIS fighters sneaking in guns and shit like that. They just happen to use a truck to cause more deaths in that situation. So you're going to see an unarmed society cornering an armed society, essentially, and you're going to see some extreme retribution, I think. I don't hope for it, but I really think that's what you're going to see happen.
I mean, we're already seeing it though as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not much of a stretch. So what concerns you more? Because you mentioned powder keg is the best way to put this, but so we have what's going on with refugees. We have this wall going up in Norway. We have China flexing its naval muscle and us kind of doing what we can to put an end to it by flying nuclear bombs over there and saying, like, hey, remember what happened to Japan? You know, don't get too big on us now.
Yeah. You know how you don't have aircraft carriers? Look at us.
Right. So it was time for us to slap our dick on the table. So to me, I feel like we are in Archduke
Vegas on C-SPAN's Newsmakers program is
World War III. And
I believe if my name were just included in the top
perspective
line,
of China
that,
and what we think China thinks about us and what we think they're feeling, but you know, who's to say we don't piss them off enough to make them actually do something?
Me.
You okay? That's fair.
Mainly because, and as much as I hate the amount of military muscle we have spread out everywhere, I was talking about an episode or two ago, or maybe it was Bread Circuses or something else. Their only aircraft carrier right now is a Cold War era aircraft carrier they bought off of Russia that they can't even launch a jet fighter off of. It's literally being used just for training. So they don't really have a way of projecting their power overseas. I mean, they may have ICBMs, but your first move to take over a society or get payment back from a society for money owed is not to blow up the entire infrastructure of that society. That's a really bad move to get anything from it. That would have to be completely out of vengeance. And that's the only time that nuclear weapons make sense, Donald Trump, since you were asking. Was not to convince the people to come over your way or to give you money you owe them. It did work to knock the Japanese out of a war, but we also had to spend a bunch of money rebuilding those cities. Money that I think we kind of kept from them having to ever end up paying us back. I don't remember how reparations worked for World War II. That's something we should look into a little bit. Do you remember how that worked out?
I don't remember how that worked out. I could tell you a little bit about how the World War I situation worked out, but I know more information there than how World War II is.
I think we all do. I'm assuming we've all read Mein Kampf while being in jail at least once. So, no. But yeah, and that's essentially, I think we learned our lesson from World War I, and that's why we didn't really do the same thing with reparations in World War II, because we didn't want to create these disenfranchised populations that come back to attack us. Except we only learned it for maybe 40 or 50 years, and here we are doing it to the Middle East. Luckily, they're a little bit behind us when it comes to the entire military technology field.
Yeah.
For now. I think you might see China's economy collapse, though, if we default. I mean, they're already lending us this money off the backs of their poorest citizens, so you could see some crazy shit happen there. I mean, we don't really hear a whole lot about revolutionaries in China, and maybe it's because their civilization is mainly disarmed. But Tiananmen Square wasn't that long ago, and that was them saying, look, we don't even care if you have guns. We're just going to stand in front of them. There's still more of us than there are you. We're that fed up. So you see their dollar collapse because we just said, fuck you, we're not paying you all this money. So suddenly the Chinese currency has also collapsed because it's based off money we owe them. You might see those people get pissed off, and they do have ICBMs. So God only knows who you see get behind that field at the end of something like that. You don't really have to worry about that so much in the Middle East, except with Israel and probably Iran. I'm almost of the school of thought that Iran probably already has a nuke. That all of this other shit is just them pretending like they don't, so we don't catch on to it. But I like tinfoil hats a lot. Did you have anything to add? I feel like we've definitely filled a solid hour here, I'd hope. Hopefully brought some information to some people that they didn't know about. Maybe.
No, I'm feeling pretty good about wrapping it up about here if you are.
Yeah, I feel good about it. Again, this is RJ with 60 Grit Radio. We are on the Bad Dinner Guest Network. I would really appreciate if you guys went to www.baddinnerguest.blogspot.com and check out the blog. You can follow us on Twitter at Bad Dinner Guests?
Yes, sir.
Or Facebook at the same thing. Or you can just follow me by myself because I'm pretty awesome at 60 Grit Radio on Facebook or the Twitter.
Just don't follow us in person. It's creepy.
Actually, I kind of like that a lot. If you want to follow me in person, I live at